I'm going to assume that I don't need to introduce all of these people. You have your programs, but let's just, I guess in that case, just go around and do a round of self-introductions and a little bit about what you each do. Liz, you start.
I'm Liz Neumark. I'm the founder and CEO of Great Performances.
Which is?
Which is a catering company that started in the early 80s here in New York as a waitress service for women in the arts. Also in our little bag of tricks, we have a farm upstate New York, Kotchke Farm, and very active in the nonprofit world food space, helped launch the Sylvia Center. We teach children how to cook. So it's a very 360 life in food.
Great, thanks.
Linda Kozlowski. I'm the CEO of Blue Apron, and we're a meal solutions company that basically provides kits with recipes and fresh ingredients for people to be able to prepare meals at home, discover new ingredients, and experience culinary authority.
Hi, I'm Britt Lundgren with Stonyfield, an organic yogurt company based in New Hampshire, and I lead our work on organic and sustainable agriculture.
My name is James Rogers. I'm the founder and CEO of Apeel Sciences, and we use food to preserve food, which sounds kind of like, what does that mean? And so what that means is we use materials that are found in every bite of fruit and vegetable that you eat every day in order to create a water-based solution that we apply to the surface of fresh produce. It adds a little extra peel. You can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't feel it, but it's there, and it slows down the things that cause fruit to age, and it allows us to have the fruit be nutritious 2, 3, or even 4 times longer.
I'm Chris Daugherty, Vice President of PepsiCo. My team heads up our sustainable agriculture and responsible sourcing. So you may go, really? PepsiCo? Blue Can Pepsi? Why are you there? Well, think about it. We have potatoes out of Lay's, oranges out of Tropicana. We have some really great chickpeas and hummus. We have Naked Juice. We have Stacy's Chips. And so there's a lot of fruits and vegetables that need to be produced responsibly all over the world, and that's what my team does. So thank you for inviting us.
Well, no, this is going to be great. I'm going to start with you, actually. I think that, probably PepsiCo knows more about what people actually want to eat than any other company on earth, even if it's secret in their darkest moments of how many, donuts they want and how little hummus. But, and people, I'm sure you do tons of market research where people say, I really want to eat sustainably, but then they say, but I don't want to spend more than $1 on a bag of snacks. Mm-hmm. So can we talk a little bit about how that, how you guys work with that, and you guys should feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah. So. We have a lot of marketing folks through our insights. We work with partners, the Yale School, New York schools, customers, consumers, and you're right. There's a lot of consumers and customers that say, you know what, I really want to eat healthy, but I kind of like my chili Fritos every once in a while, and that's okay. I think what we want to do is provide choices and give those choices to consumers that are healthy. Example, Sabra, chickpeas. And if you haven't been there, there's a little pop-up store called World Pea, World, like that pea, not world round. But anyway, that's hummus. And so that's a way to nudge consumers down into an area. Maybe we can say, put it on some carrot sticks, put it on some celery, or, maybe you want to slap it on a Stacy's chip or something.
So was there, I don't know how long you've been there or how long when you guys acquired Sabra, but I mean, obviously not that long ago, hummus was something, children didn't eat it. You had to go to the health food store to get it. What was, not in detail, but what do you think was the one thing that made hummus go mainstream?
Yeah, so I think part of it is you introduce it into areas, you have marketing, you get consumers, you work with partners to try to, as we like to say, nudge that consumer into that item. And then just, basic word of mouth. I mean, gosh, how many people are here? If you haven't been and tried hummus, go try hummus and go try Sabra. So that's how we're getting it done.
Okay.
If I could just jump on that as
Please.
well, what I think Pepsi and other CPG does really well is you nail the first moment of truth and the second moment of truth. The first moment of truth, what does it look like in the store? And the second moment of truth, you hit all the right flavor profiles when you get it home. And with Apeel, we think about the same thing. The first moment of truth is how does the produce show up in the store? If it doesn't look like great food, it's just natural reaction, we don't bring it home with us. But what really matters for that repeat purchase and that brand development is that second moment of truth. And where Apeel is trying to come in here is there's really no brands that we look at in fresh produce. There are names that we may know, but we don't prefer one banana over another banana. And so we see the opportunity to use food to create a better experience in that second moment of truth when you're actually eating the food in your home. Because if you buy an apple and it looks like an apple and you bring it home and it just isn't that bag of Fritos, then you're probably not going to go buy it again. But if you've ever had the opportunity to go to the farm and eat the food as if it's just picked, it's addicting. And we think there's an opportunity to use food to create that experience in that second moment of truth when it really matters.
So Apeel is described, it sounds like it's like a natural wax almost. I mean, is it sort of like you would see that natural coating on an apple? Or?
So monks figured out in the Middle Ages that you could dip apples in beeswax and they would last throughout the winter. And then we were shocked to go into grocery stores now and apples are still dipped in beeswax. And we thought, wow, we've learned a hell of a lot about material science in the last 2,000 years. There are other food materials that we could use to instead of just adding shine, add functional benefits and allow us to maintain nutrition, maintain flavor profiles, maintain that aesthetic beauty, which is the reason that, again, that first moment of truth.
Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit unfathomable, I have to say, the idea. I understood it about avocados, sure, a lime, I can see it. How do you dip a raspberry in wax?
Well, that's the rate limiting factor right now. So the factors that cause fresh produce to spoil are water loss and oxidation. So it's water going out and oxygen going in, and that happens for everything. Doesn't matter if it's a raspberry or a strawberry. The challenge, so we've developed these formulas for 50 different produce categories, but applying it to strawberries is the challenge. And so we look for companies that have developed automated solutions for harvesting or are doing indoor production so that we can match our solution with that technology. And so right now, the products that we're on store shelves with are things like avocados, limes, categories that are a little bit more hardy, and they're already being handled in a facility. So our ability to release products in those types of categories really follows the innovation in the production community.
Okay, so let's switch over from the production to the consumer side for a minute. Linda of Blue Apron, obviously you guys get a lot of feedback. Mm-hmm. It's a very immediate, I'm sure either people reorder that meal kit or they don't, right? So tell me about what kind of feedback you're getting about sustainability and how important that is, and especially in terms of, maybe let's focus on like meat substitutes, because I know that you guys are trying to work with those.
Sure. Well, the feedback we get is actually quite rich, and the interesting thing is our culinary team reads every single piece of it in thinking about what to produce. Now, obviously, the primary thing that you can do when you're thinking about any type of sustainability is make sure you're reducing food waste as much as humanly possible. So that means creating really great recipes that people want to eat, giving them just the right amount of ingredients that they don't necessarily throw anything away, and they're only getting what they need so they don't have food waste at home. And then also incorporating all the technology we use to understand exactly what people are ordering to make sure we're ordering the minimal amount of things for the freshest ingredients and minimal food waste in our own facilities. So that's sort of step one. Then step two is we did start seeing, we know that a big part of why people love Blue Apron is we tend to use unique ingredients and help them discover things. So for example, I fell in love with kale using Blue Apron 3 years ago. And the learning how to cook a squash or learning how to cook gailan, which is Chinese broccoli, you're being able to learn all these new and unique ways to cook things that you might be intimidated in by the store. So now you're actually eating healthier because you're cooking things that you hadn't thought of before and getting a lot more confident with vegetables and other ingredients. Then the final piece is, as we start getting more and more demand from our customers to go plant forward and to have more plant-based ingredients, that's when we started expanding into things like, let's look at Beyond Meat and let's look at some of the other options that we actually have tofu, et cetera, for bringing more plant-based foods into people's lives. And the feedback has been incredible. We introduced Beyond Meat in August, and we see higher retention, higher order rates.
As a burger,
We introduced it as a burger, but part of the reasons that we actually chose we chose Beyond Meat in particular, is we knew that people didn't just want it in burger form. So we started with 4 burgers, but then we just recently had enchiladas on our menu, and they were exceptionally highly rated because the texture of the product lends itself really well to the sauces, et cetera. And that was in our family plan, so we're starting to expose Beyond Meat into more different aspects of cooking and not just serving it as a burger. And we're seeing more and more demand for that.
and do you have any information on whether there seems to be just on whether the people who are enthusiastic about that are actually mostly meat eaters who are switching, or are they vegetarians who are like, great, now we have Beyond Meat?
We put it forward as an option for people who really wanted to learn how to prepare Beyond Meat, like get instructions on it, not just go to the store and pick it up, but actually have, here's a recipe, here's instructions, here's what to do. But we actually put it on our menu as a meat option in place of, not necessarily saying this is just for vegetarians, because it isn't necessarily about being vegetarian. It's about wanting to be more sustainable, wanting to explore plant-based foods, and that was really our focus. So we've seen demand across the board from people who are vegetarian or vegan into people who are actually meat eaters and just want to try to incorporate more plant-based products into their lives.
So, but how do you, one person's gailon is another person's Brussels sprout.
Yeah,
how do you know what, we face this at the Times a lot, like what is a new ingredient?
That's actually, that's the perfect analogy, and we talk about this all the time. Discovery is a core part of our platform of learning, whether it's a new technique or a new ingredient. That's a big part about what we do. A lot of people love ramen but have never cooked ramen at home, and you can do that with us. And so that's really, discovery for us is really about what is discovery for you. And I'm probably going to steal that from you and use the nylon Brussels sprout analogy in the future. But it's true. For some people, cooking ramen is actually the most adventurous thing they've ever done, whereas for someone else, it might actually be experimenting with kale, or it might be some other sort of, or using certain chili pepper for the first time. So what we're trying to do is give people a variety of choices that they can incorporate, and they can find their own version of discovery. For me, the dish that hooked me was the first time that I made a fish dish that actually had pickled grapes on top of it, which I'd never thought about doing before. It was delicious. I've been cooking since I was 5. So I've been a cook for a really long time, but the combination of flavors were really what got me hooked, and that was my version of discovery.
So, and Liz, I'm always interested to talk to you because you deal with a very, people in New York. It's a very, you do weddings, you do jazz at Lincoln Center. You're up and down the scale. So, and as we know, food trends tend to trickle in that direction. So I'm always interested in what caterers are hearing, what brides and grooms are asking for. What is their level of concern about sustainability? Because also that is a huge business and with a lot of waste issues.
So I'd say it's really, it's a dichotomy. We have clients who want to be on the cutting edge. They want to know what's happening with plant-based. But I would say, for the most part, we have traditional eaters. There's never a line for the veggie burger. But, and there's so much, we're at these important moments in people's lives, and they're making decisions on multiple levels. So it's a nonprofit. I've got to worry about my funders. It's an organ we feed Rockefeller University, so it's from Nobel Prize winners to to the staff, and there are really different kind of food choices. The obesity department loves donuts. So I find
so are there things that you do behind the scenes, I guess?
There are, because to be a caterer is to cater to. So I'm here to get you what you want, but I also feel that my responsibility is to try to educate. So as we present choices to our clients, we say, okay, I know you mentioned asparagus and it's January, and these are coming from the other side of the Western Hemisphere. Why don't we look at butternut squash? And it's a give and take. It's a conversation. And sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. 10 years ago, if you came to our meal at the plaza, there'd be a nice big chunk of meat. And over the last 10 years, we're slowly shrinking it. And it doesn't have to be what it was. It was like meat, starch, vegetable, these horrible words.
The food pyramid.
So now we try to introduce more components. Why do you have to have 3 pieces? So it's grains, it's different kinds of vegetables. So my job is yes, to do what you want when you call me up for your party, but it's also to educate and expose and challenge a little bit. And it could be tricky sometimes because some people just want what they want. And you just have to say, try a little hummus with it.
Exactly.
Double check.
And how often do you get people asking for chili Fritos?
More now.
There's a gal in the office who's got a big stack. She loves them.
What are chili Fritos? Is that like flaming hot Cheetos? Or is
They're in
it?
the back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Stonyfield Farms. All right. This is not, I just want to talk about dairy a little bit. That's obviously a very complicated topic, and sustainability, and something that I have to say as a journalist that I only really learned about when we did a big climate issue in the food section, and the conversation about sort of, sadly often, what's worst. How can I do the least damage in how I eat? And in terms of greenhouse gases, learning that, that yes, of course, meat is a problem, but also dairy. As far as the, as far as the planet is concerned, a cow is a cow, pretty much, and there's a lot of problems associated with that. So, how are you guys working with that? Like, is the solution to improve dairy, or is the solution to make synthetic dairy out of lipids and liquids and do that?
Well, we really believe that all agriculture has room for improvement and reducing its greenhouse gas impact. And we are a dairy company. We make a dairy-based product, and our consumers love that. They're looking for yogurt as a healthy snack and a delicious snack, and we don't see turning away from that anytime soon. But we do see tremendous opportunity to team up with the farmers that we're sourcing from and identify how they can reduce their impact on climate change. And this is something we've been looking at for a very long time at Stonyfield. We were the first food products company to do a full life cycle analysis of our greenhouse gas emissions back in the 90s, back when this wasn't hip and no one was talking about it. And it was glaringly obvious even then that over half of our emissions were coming from agriculture, and that was driven by dairy. And since then, the company has experimented with a bunch of different ways that we might reduce emissions, and we kept running up against this challenge that there are lots of tools and technologies for measuring or maybe tackling one specific piece of the farm emissions puzzle, but none of these tools are particularly good at getting information back to the farm level to help farmers make better decisions about how they can reduce their emissions and track the results. And so that's where we have chosen to focus. We've partnered with Wolf's Neck Center for Agriculture and the Environment and the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research to launch a new open source technology platform. It's called Open Team. And it's designed to connect this universe of tools to each other so that a farmer can enter information once, and that information can be moved through models and through decision support tools. We can pull in validation from spectral analysis and soil health testing. We can use remote sensing data. And all of it that can help us drive really site-specific recommendations back to the farm level. We have just launched this platform this summer, so we're just now talking to our farmers about taking their first steps with helping us trial the tool and improve it. But we expect that once we have this up and running across our farms, that we can reduce our entire business's greenhouse gas footprint by over 30%. So we can make a huge impact, primarily through improving soil health, which we think is just an incredible area of opportunity for addressing climate change.
Yeah, I want to just jump in on there. We also agree at PepsiCo, and that's part of our program. We have something called the Sustainable Farming Program, where we engage with our farmers on good water stewardship, soil health, worker safety. The other thing too that we're really looking at from a global perspective is how do we engage more women farmers across the globe. Lots of statistics out there that if women have the same resources as their male counterpart, they will increase productivity 20 to 30, maybe 40%. And so think about that from a society and a social norm, especially in developing countries. And so we're really excited to partner with folks like CARE and others to lift up women in agriculture, because I think that's going to help solve some of these big, massive issues.
You know, the other thing we're talking about, we're all in the food business in such different little niches. But, you know, just sort of listening to what Sam said this morning, you know, how are we going to change? You know, we're all tinkering at the edges of what our definition of sustainability. And the truth is, it's just not eating 21st century style is simply not sustainable. So how do we, you know, also look down the road to say,
Right. I mean, all of these are, you know,
Judgment Day.
Different ways of approaching a giant problem. And as you said, it's kind of around the edges. When really the best thing, as I think everyone agrees, as Mark Bittman said, like eat more plants. And why is that so hard? Like, we've all known about that probably for 20 years, you know, at this point. And there was a time when eating locally and seasonally seemed like that was going to save the planet. That was enough. That was all we really had to do. But really, you know, if we did eat more plants and legumes, that would solve a lot of problems. And, you know, I feel very mixed about this. I have 2 kids. I buy a lot of Cheetos because they're so much more affordable than, you know, the organic versions. So I guess maybe we could all talk about that a little bit, about changing consumer taste, because I feel like a lot of you are in that field.
Wow. I think one of the interesting things that we see is knowledge and the ability to accomplish. And what I mean by that is sometimes eating either plant-based or grain-based can be very intimidating if you don't know how to do it, if you don't know what to cook to make it taste good. And when you look at a Blue Apron plate, you'll often see there'll be a portion of meat. If it is a meat-based dish. We also have a lot of vegetable-based dishes. But then you'll see a very strong sort of you know, sweet potato, radish bake, or something along those lines, where a big part of the plate is actually either grain or grain and vegetable, or pure vegetable together. And one of the things that we hear from our customers is they want more and more of that. And that's one of the things that we're looking at as far as flexibility in the future, is how do we introduce more of the grains and vegetables in. But consistently, one of the things that we hear the most is people start to get a lot more excited about ingredients that aren't traditionally necessarily something that they would be drawn to in the store, because they now know how to make it. You know, we have proprietary spice blends that we bring in. We teach them how to use vinegar in the right amounts to really bring out the flavor of some of these grains. And that's been actually very life-changing for a lot of people that we hear from, in that I never even knew, you know, what to do with a lentil, or what to do with farro, or what to do with sweet potatoes, or what to do with all these different ingredients. Now I love them because they're coming through in such a very different flavor from what I had before. So I think it goes back to your original question of, you want to make things that people want to eat, and we believe strongly in empowering them to create those things themselves, and that changes their relationship with food.
Yeah, taste and availability. And we actually find one of the, so our product helps reduce waste in stores, reduces waste in the home. And one of the original things people came to us and said, well, as a grocer, if my customers buy less or throw away less, aren't they going to buy less? And empirically, it turns out to be exactly the opposite. As you throw away less in your home, you actually end up buying more, and that creates more availability. And
Because it creates like a virtuous circle of cooking and using up your ingredients.
It makes sense when you ask the question, you know, do you buy 10 pounds of strawberries at a time? And you say no. And why? Well, I'm going to throw some away. People have been pricing in this waste into their purchase decisions for a long time. And so, we see 50% waste reduction in stores, and 3 or 4 extra days of edible time on avocados in people's homes. Instead of going into the store and just buying 2 avocados, now they're buying 3 avocados, or now they're buying 4 avocados, because they're able to have them in their homes. And when you shift that abundance into the home, now it's an easy choice to select that thing, whereas the alternatives have been a little bit easier. And so if we can make fruits and vegetables more delicious and more available by shifting that abundance into our homes, where we're not having to stress out about, well, I might throw that away, so I'm probably not going to buy it. That's really the opportunity that we see. And the other part of this is getting more biodiversity in the system. The number of, there's like 12 fruits and vegetables that make up 2/3 of our purchases in the grocery store. And the reason for that is those fruits and vegetables have the most transportability. So if you think of a farmer as an investor who's investing in, what's their total addressable market, if you grow something and it only is only able to last for a day, your total addressable market is everyone that lives within a day. If you're able to grow something and work with a company like Apeel or another, and create that transportability into something that's naturally delicious, now you get more investment into this biodiversity and these new flavors into the food system. And this combination of ability to bring something in your home and not stress about throwing it away, and this discovery element of new things that nature is providing for us to taste and enjoy and create new recipes with, I think that's how we get to a plant-based food system that people are excited about.
I think that waste piece is really interesting. University of Michigan did a study in April where they actually traced the carbon footprint of a meal kit versus going to the grocery store to buy all the same ingredients. And meal kits were 1/3 lower, including all packaging and everything, because of the amount of waste in the supply chain as well as the amount of packaging in the supply chain. And some of that is in the supply chain itself coming into the store. A big part of that, though, is the fear of, if I'm going to make this recipe with carrots, I have to buy a pound of carrots, and I only need 1 carrot. And that creates a fear and an intimidation over using some of these ingredients, because now you're like, what do I do with the rest of these carrots? I'm going to have to throw them away, and that's really concerning for people. So that's where we feel that being able to really target and source exactly what you need is what allows that discovery, and then people to get a lot more confident with eating, frankly, better.
I understand the confidence part, and that's so interesting because I think the barrier for so many people is just fear.
Yeah.
Like, what if I screw it up? I mean,
Yeah.
So what happens if you mess up
Right.
the kale? Nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Compost. But I think we think about we happen to serve a very privileged group.
Yeah.
Your price points. It's hard. So how we think about scaling and what it takes to get to greater sustainability for more people, is a giant issue.
Yeah, I mean, especially I
political
just
issue,
was talking to on another panel someone from Impossible Foods, which is exorbitantly expensive at the moment because of their still, the years of R&D that went into making that and continues to. And that's, they're going to have to earn that back, even as they say, we are going to India, we are going to China, we will sell, 17-cent burgers there. But sorry, I did want to get back to consumer stuff because, Britt, I wanted to ask about yogurt, is a bit like hummus in some ways. And I grew up with both of those because my parents were hippies. And I've seen yogurt turn into something that, the sugar grams, like sometimes they'll have 22 grams of sugar, and they're, come with M&Ms and granola and.
I'm getting the wrong yogurt.
Well, but I think a lot of people, it still has kind of a health halo, and people think, oh, yogurt must be healthier than ice cream or whatever. But is there a way, are you seeing any, I've noticed that some brands have now lower sugar yogurt. Is that something that you're seeing as a trend?
Yeah, we have heard loud and clear from consumers that they are concerned about sugar content of yogurt, and we responded to that by reducing sugar in our own products. So across our entire portfolio, we've reduced sugar by an average of 25% over the past 2-3 years.
And are you labeling it as low sugar, or is it just like a secretly little bit by little bit?
Different products have called this out differently, and some of them called it out when we did it, and they don't call it out anymore. There's not a lot of real estate on a yogurt package to talk about anything. So, but our kids' products, we're especially proud that our kids' products have 40% less sugar than the leading kids yogurt brand. So this is something that we have really focused on, and we do believe yogurt is, a very healthy food and can be a great part of a healthy diet. And I also want to just push back a little bit on this idea that the only way we can move to eating more sustainably is to eat more plant-based. I mean, I'm all for having more plants in everyone's diets. Clearly we need it, especially here in America. But I do think there are differences in the ways that we raise livestock and dairy cows in this country. And organic systems are putting cows out on pasture, they're keeping land in permanent cover, and they're doing a lot of the things that make organic a friendlier system and when it comes to our impact on climate change. And we know that our consumers, part of why they seek out organic is because they know about these benefits. And they also are aware of the health benefits that tie from having cows out on pasture to the nutritional content of the milk. We're seeing increasingly more evidence that when cows are grazing on grass, the amount of omega-3 fatty acids in whole milk is higher by about 60% compared with conventional whole milk. So that's a real health benefit that we can provide from a specific system of livestock agriculture.
I think we miss that a lot. We are what we eat, and that means cows are what they eat as well. So what they feed, what they graze on, is actually the same molecules that make them up, which it translates into the products.
Absolutely.
I think we're going to go to questions in just a couple of minutes. Is there anything, not to open it up to all sorts of monologues, but is there anything anyone really feels like?
Just worried there's going to be less banana bread in the world. Because I love when my bananas run.
No, we just have more time to make the banana bread.
There you go. I did actually want to go back to this cost concept because I think we feel strongly that one of the ways that you overall start to reduce the cost of food and fresh food is to waste less.
That's right.
And so I think that in general, reducing waste helps drive down the cost of food and make it more accessible to everyone. And I think that's everyone's responsibility.
Yeah, no question. The amount of waste in the food system
It's a
today
good real-
is the
a
reason
good real
for
world-
the price point.
a real world
Cost is a
solution.
real factor, and I think it's important to consider. And there's lots of ways you can impact that, but reducing waste is one of those ways.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, we're going to open it up. Sorry. Oh, you've got the mic. Okay.
It seems that in the space of agriculture, there's generally increasing consensus that regenerative agriculture provides multiple solutions for multiple problems: better food, better for the earth, biodiversity, et cetera, et cetera. How are these big food companies like Danone and Pepsi actually driving that change? Because you have enormous power to change the supply chain by what you demand, but I understand there are obstacles to it, and I think Nestle and Danone, Mars, and Unilever left the grocery manufacturer of America, which is now defunct, and created the Sustainable Food Policy Alliance to start to do these things. So I think these big players like you have the ability to drive the market to fund regenerative ag and to do that. So what are the things you're doing to do that, and what are the challenges to doing it just full scale?
Yeah, it's a great question. Hope you heard that, but basically he's asking what is a company like PepsiCo doing to work toward regenerative ag or sustainable ag. A couple different things, and I see blinking, so I'll have to be fast, is working directly with our farmers on how do they do good water stewardship, soil health. Specifically, we have examples where we're working with a Cargill and Unilever and a big, large customer on having those farmers in Iowa and Illinois and Indiana use cover crops during the rotation to put back nutrients into the soil. We also have to work in certain areas on policy. Agricultural policy has not been changed in a long time. And how do we think about getting some of these policies to give incentives to farmers on cover crops and other things and moving land into that? One of the key things on regenerative ag is you always need to think about farmer livelihood. And so how do we make sure that the farmer is getting sufficient wages and making sure that they can make a fair and reasonable living? So we we have our sustainable food systems that we're driving to, and we know the farmer is absolutely the pinnacle and the key starting factor.
We've really focused in on how we can advance regenerative ag with the technology platform I mentioned earlier, Open Team. We think measurement is really key at this point in preventing regenerative from becoming just another buzzword without any meaning behind it. And so our focus is on putting tools in the hands of farmers that can help them measure and make decisions at the farm level that can drive improvement.
I'm really sorry that we don't have more time. But these guys will probably be around. You can ask them more questions. And thank you all very much for coming. We really appreciate it.